Hello students, I am Dr. Saleha Jamal, Faculty Department of Geography, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. So we are here with the course Climate Change Vulnerability and Adaptation. And today's topic of the class is climate change issues, weather extremes. From long time we are studying the climate change, causes of climate change, natural or anthropogenic, or we can say there are similar various spheres which are affected by the climate change. So in today's class we are going to discuss about the weather extremes, how the climate change is impacting the various weather phenomena. So whenever we talk about the topic weather extreme, something comes in mind. If you think, here you can see like wildfire, ice melting, flood, storm, drought, etc. So these type of events comes in mind when we talk about the weather extremes. Whether the climate change is responsible for these events? No, these events comes naturally also, but climate change is responsible for increasing their frequency, and not only increasing their frequency but also increasing their strength and intensity, which will increase the disaster through these events. That's why it becomes very important to know how the climate change is impacting the weather events or weather related hazards and disaster. So let us start the class, student. Climate change is one of the driving more extreme weather events across all over the globe. You can see various data. If we talk about the events of flooding, the rate has increased. If we talk about the events of the wildfire, the rate and area both has increased. If we talk about the hurricanes, tornadoes, storm surges, their number and even the intensity and strength has been increased. That's why we are saying climate change is one of the driving more extreme weather events across the globe. Events like we talk about heat waves, floods, droughts, wildfires are becoming more frequent day by day and more intense. Mainly the human activities. And if you remember, we have said in human activities, primarily the burning of the fossil fuels, which releases huge amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, due to which global warming takes place. So, due to this rising temperature, several weather related events that also increases their frequency, strength and intensity. So, mainly the human activities, primarily I am talking about the burning of fossil fuels, has increased greenhouse gas emissions and warming of this planet, and these rising temperature is affecting water cycle, the carbon cycle, various weather patterns, and also increasing the severity of the natural disaster, because all these things are linked in a system. If one is affected, that will affect all the things, all the events or all the phenomena which are linked in the system. So there is a urgent need to take action in order to mitigate these impact and to avoid this climate catastrophe. Now, just see what the greenhouse gas emission and global warming is, how it is related. Already we have discussed in previous classes the phenomena, the process, how the greenhouse is increasing the global temperature. So, the main source here for the release of greenhouse gas, although there are various sources, here is the burning of fossil fuels. Also, greenhouse gases are released with various other activities also, and at the landfill site the methane is released, agricultural practices also releases carbon dioxide, etc. There are various sources, but the major and the primary source is burning of the fossil fuels, which releases carbon dioxide, methane and other greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. What does this greenhouse gas in the atmosphere do? They trap the heat in the atmosphere and thus raise the global temperature and even the temperature of the oceans. Since we see the level of carbon dioxide, how it is increasing, if we analyze from the pre-industrial to the now post-industrial era and till today, we will see there is huge increase from around about 218 or something part per million. We are more than releasing 420 part per million. So, you can see here a huge increase in the emission of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere since the industrial revolution. This warming trend is fueling the climatic changes, and thus the intensity and frequency of extreme weather is increasing. If we can cut this emission, if we can reduce the emission of these greenhouse gases, so it is not only if we can cut, but now it is very much essential and necessary to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere in order to slow down the global temperature rise. So, let us start with few of the extreme weather events which is generally observed due to the climatic changes. First is the heat waves. Heat waves in terms of their frequency and intensity. Heat waves are becoming more frequent and heat waves are becoming more frequent and prolonged due to the rising global temperature. They will pose a serious health risk. Public health will be at risk, especially the vulnerable population who are already stressed with some of the health issues. Those population will be more vulnerable. Even the increased energy demand will be observed during the heat waves, and when this energy demand increases, and if it is coming from the thermal power plants, so on other hand it will release more carbon dioxide, more greenhouse effect, more rise in global temperature. So, somewhat we can say this is a feedback loop that is related to each other. So, more energy demand will be there, which will stress the power grids, leading to the blackouts. If we take certain examples like in July 2023, temperature in Death Valley that was recorded 130°F, close to the hottest ever recorded temperature. Why this happening? There must be some reason behind that, and most of the researched out reason is due to the climate change. So, we have to invest in heat adaptation strategies such as urban cooling, emergency response plan, etc., that can help to mitigate these situations. We can see through this graph here clearly, if we see the heat wave frequency, you can see from 1960s to 2020s, there is a huge increase in the average number of heat waves per year. Almost started from on an average 2 and has reached above 6. There is a huge increase you can see in the average number of heat waves per year. Similarly, if we see the heat wave duration, that is the average length of the individual's heat wave, that also here we can see the increasing trend. Not only this, about when we analyze the data of heat wave season, that is heat wave season, where the average length of annual heat wave season is also increasing. You can clearly view at a glance how the average length of annual heat wave days is increasing. And even if we talk about the heat wave intensity, that is the average temperature above the local threshold during the heat waves, that we can also see in increasing trend. So, overall that is why nowadays we are saying that not only due to the climate change, if we are talking about the heat waves, the heat wave frequency is increasing, the duration is also increasing, heat wave season is also increasing, and even the heat wave intensity is also increasing. So, this is just one of the data from the United States by decadal data. This situation, this type of data can also be viewed for various other places. Now, what are the health impacts of these heat waves? It is but obvious. Direct impact is heat stroke, dehydration, which is very common one. It will affect first the most vulnerable population, firstly the elderly population having some pre-existing health issues, maybe in terms of some diseases or maybe some in terms of immunity, etc. Then what will happen? A demand for the air conditioning will increase. If you see here, during the extreme heat, that will add more carbon emissions to the atmosphere. Not only this, CFCs will be also emitted through the increased use of air conditioning, etc. So, it creates one type of feedback loop, where on one side, due to the heat waves, air conditioning demand is increasing, and on the other side, due to this, carbon emissions in the atmosphere is increasing, which will raise the temperature. Then there will be more intensity and frequency of heat waves, which will again give the demand for the air conditioning. Means it is developing a sort of feedback loop. Not only this, heat waves can increase the respiratory issues due to the increased air pollution, and for this, community need better health care, cooling solutions in order to mitigate the heat effects. You can see here, this is just a diagrammatic representation showing through the trees how heat waves is increasing. So, due to which various health risks are also increases, vulnerable population will be at higher risk, respiratory issues will exacerbate, similarly poor cooling infrastructure that will risk, then insufficient healthcare solution that will limit effective response to the heat impacts. Not only this, there will be a demand of increased air conditioning systems. So, these are the some of the repercussions due to heat waves. Now, another extreme weather event is heavy precipitation and flooding. Warm air, we know that holds more moisture, leading to heavier storms. As the global temperature rise, the air is becoming more warmer. It is the characteristics of warm air that it can hold more moisture, which will lead to heavy storms. Urban flooding, cities are becoming impermeable, means day by day due to the built up it is concretizing. So, it means we are reducing the soaking capacity of the land. So, mainly it is said for the cities because due to the expansion of the built up area, soaking capacity of the land is being decreased. Thus, they are facing higher risk of flash flooding, urban flooding, etc. This is the urban flooding risk. Then river flooding. Higher rainfall will lead to rising river levels, thus flooding will occur, which will disrupt many of the activities, damage infrastructure and ecosystem and all. Not only this, increased evaporation. Global temperature rise will lead to increased evaporation. The warmer air drives evaporation, adding more moisture that will intensify the storms. Again, it is all we can say interconnected phenomena. So, in this also the impact can be seen. Wetter regions get more wetter and drier regions are getting more drier. So, areas with heavy rainfall see even more extreme precipitation due to the climate change. So, this is some of the basics about the extreme weather events related to the heavy precipitation and flooding. Now, we will understand by taking example of 2023 Northeast US flooding. So, in July 2023, flash floods were observed in Northeast US. Heavy rain in the US Northeast caused severe flooding, especially in the Vermont state capital. Lots of economic damage was reported with at least one casualty. Not only this, 12.6 million US properties now at higher flood risk due to the extreme rainfall events. This is what? That is, we can say, prediction, vulnerability analysis. Through that vulnerability analysis, we have got this data. 12.6 million US properties are now at risk. Not only this, seeing this, we can proceed for future preparedness. Better flood defenses can be strategized, which need to handle increased precipitation. This is some of the, I can say, the picture showing the flood situation there. Then another major event, weather event, that is the rising droughts, frequency and severity. Now we can see due to the climate change, the drought condition is rising. The drought years are frequently observed, even the severity is being increased due to this climate change. This is causing longer, more intense drought in many of the region. We will study through the example also. What this droughts will do, drought will pose risk mainly to the agriculture sector, directly related, or we can say it is one of the climate sensitive sector. So, drought reduces the crop yields, that will lead to the shortage of food, and that will again lead to the cost rise. That is, we can say, financial, not only the cost rise of the food, but also there will be a financial crisis to the farmers also. So, everything is related. The drought will reduce crop yields, that will lead to food shortage, and cost rise, that will lead to the financial losses for farmers. Not only this, it also affects the water availability, because we are talking about the drought. So, it leads to water scarcity also. These extended droughts can stress freshwater supplies, thus impacting the drinking water and the irrigation water. It also enhances the drier conditions. Higher temperature dry out soil, water resources, even that worsens the drought impact, not only locally but overall, we can say globally. You can say, take here example of mega drought in American West. It is one of the historic drought, and the American West is facing one of the worst, I can say, drought in over 1200 years, despite of the 2023 rainfall. What will be the long term effect of this? We can say climate change is making drought last longer, and it will hit more harder. It will threaten the communities living nearby in it, or nearby in vicinity, or even the ecosystem. Not only this extreme drought condition is experienced by the many areas, and thus damaging the crop and limiting the water supplies. You can view here the red and the dark brown. These are the regions which shows the extreme and exceptional drought in this region. You can see the overall US drought monitoring, a major portion, a major area is affected by the drought. These impacts of drought in agriculture, you can see here. If you are talking about in terms of pros and cons, none of the identified pros are there. None of the identified pros are there. Everything you can see here in consequences: reduced water availability, lower crop yield, see the relation, economic losses for the farmers, increased food prices, and potential food shortages. All these are links. Only there is a, due to the drought, reduced water capacity, that will lead to low yields of the crops, that will lead to economic losses for the farmers, increased food prices, and certainly to the food shortages. So, after seeing few of the weather extremes, another very important weather extremes due to the climate change is, that is the tropical storms and hurricanes. Their frequency and intensity due to the climate change has already been increased from long ago. If we see the stronger storms like warmer oceans, temperature fuel more intense tropical cyclones and hurricanes with stronger winds and heavier rainfalls. Not only this, this brings the great destruction. This increased storm intensity, frequency causes more damage to the infrastructure, ecosystem, property, thus escalating the recovery cost. Not only this, the changing storm paths, climate change may shift storm tracks also. So, if the storm tracks is shifted, so the region which is affected by it, that is not prepared for it, so more destruction can take place. Also, due to the climate change, rising storm surges are very much common. The warmer waters and the rising sea levels leads to higher storm surges, thus amplifying the coastal flooding. So, this is also one of the major climate extremes due to the climate change, I can say, which is intensifying the hurricanes, and not only I can say in the summer season, but even the winter storms are also intensified. For example, here we can say Hurricane Helen that caused historic flooding in US Southeast, killing almost 121 people and leaving millions without power. Although we know now we have a very good forecasting system, but still as there are lots of changes, erratic changes are being observed by the climate change, such type of damages occurs. We can also take example of early category 5 hurricane. When we talk about the category 5 hurricanes, means catastrophe occurs. It is one of the highest category, catastrophe occur. Hurricane Beryl in summer 2024 was the earliest category 5 storm on record, filled by exceptionally warm ocean waters. Similarly, the winter storm worsens even as winter shorten. Climate change leads to harsh winters, storms with heavier snowfall and extreme cold. Another example you can quote for the Texas snowstorm. This is a pictorial representation of Hurricane Dorian as it made landfall as a category 5 hurricane, one of the catastrophic hurricane over 3 islands in Bahamas. Another very much important extreme weather event is wildfire, whose frequency and severity is increasing. These rising temperature, prolonged dry condition that increases the risk of the wildfires. And not only this, due to the wildfire, the forests are destroyed, but the habitat for the several species that is also lost, thus reducing the biodiversity also. And on the other hand side, it is also impacting the air quality, and mostly it is these wildfires are common in the areas like western US and Australia, which are hotter and the drier regions. So, these regions are particularly more vulnerable. So, here you can take example of Canada. Nearly 900 wildfire burned across Canada, triggering air quality alert for 70 million people in eastern US. They worsen the condition, high winds, extreme dryness. California, Oregon, Washington and Colorado, they have led to unprecedented wildfires. Means mostly the drier regions are more vulnerable, and California fire, if we see in 2020, over that affected the 4 million acres of the forested area. You can just imagine how much destruction takes place during the wildfires through this picture. Even snow and ice events also is one of the major effect of the climate change. We can see the altered snowfall. Some areas may experience reduced snowfall while others are experiencing increased rainfall. Melting of glaciers is observed due to the rising global temperature. Ice sheets are melting. Due to this, sea level is rising, thus altering the marine ecosystem. And overall ecosystem impact, we will see the changes in the snow and ice disrupt various ecosystems, particularly for the species which are relying on snowpack for their habitat and breeding. Especially you can see here the species which are very much impacted by the snow melting. Another very important and direct we can say extreme weather event is sea level rise, and this is what, due to the global rise, we know ice is melting, due to which sea level is rising. Coastal flooding is the impact of sea level rise, mainly it is driven by the melting glaciers, and due to which the thermal expansion of sea water is taking place, thus increasing the risk of the coastal flooding. Due to this, many times the salt water intrusion takes place, that the higher sea level can cause salt water to infiltrate the freshwater aquifers. Even the coastal erosions are very much common due to the level rise. Erosion is being accelerated, which leads to the habitat loss and forces the displacement of communities living along the coastal areas. You can see, take here example of ocean expansion and US coastal threat. The Atlantic coast and Gulf of Mexico are facing some of the highest sea level rise rate, worsening floods and damaging the infrastructure. Over the past, if we see 150 years, average global sea levels have risen by 8 inch, which is too much. Not only this, various changes in the atmospheric circulations are taking place, the shifts in the weather patterns are taking place. This climate change is altering the atmospheric circulation, and it is also impacting the jet stream and the ocean current patterns, which will certainly impact the climate again, and this increases the weather variability, like warming temperature make weather patterns more unpredictable. So, in conclusion, it can be said that rising temperature through the greenhouse gas emission is one of the driving global warming, intensifying extreme weather. If we see, these leads to more frequent and extreme events like heat waves, floods, droughts, storms, etc. Various regional impacts can be seen through these changes. Mainly different regions face unique challenges. Some regions face drought conditions, some regions face flooding conditions, some regions face sea rise level, or some regions face wildfire, etc. So, there is a need for the adaptation, that mainly the vulnerable communities, for example, the coastal communities living in the coastal areas, and certain ecosystem that require urgent adaptation and protection strategies. Not only this, action is very much important to be taken, because global efforts to cut emission and improve resilience are essential to combat worsening of the climate extreme. So, that is all for today's class, student. Have a nice day. Thank you.